All right, everyone. Well, it is 4 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome to Evenings for Educators with the Nora, Eccles Harrison Museum of Art here at Utah State University. This is definitely an interesting way to gather everybody together, but we're very excited to have a really fun time this evening. So I am Michelle Nowling. I am the Education and Outreach Coordinator here. And my partner in crime here at the museum is Allison Decker, our Education Coordinator. Wave for us, Allison. We are also joined by Jan Haworth, our visiting artist this evening, who I'll introduce a little bit later, and Jordan Hansen from the Springville Museum of Art. And Jordan has a couple of things for us.
Thanks, Michelle. I'm really looking forward to this evening. Is it okay if I interject now?
Yep, go for
it. Okay. I just wanted to recognize Evenings for Educators as a POPS-funded program, the professional outreach programs funded through the Utah State Legislature and Utah State Board of Education. We're really grateful for their support, especially during this time, and really grateful for the hard work NEHMA put behind this workshop and evening. I have to say, I've never got so many inquiries trying to get into an evening before since working for Evenings for Educators. So I know a lot of the educators on the call are looking forward to tonight, and I also am too. So thanks for all the work that went into it. I am about to send a sign-in form. When we're in person, we just have you sign in at the front table, but I am going to send a Google form for you all to sign in. If you want to be eligible for your Midas credit, that sign-in is required. It'll just give me all the information I need. I just sent that in the chat. If you have any questions about Evenings for Educators, you can feel free to chat me or email me, and I'm really looking forward to tonight. So thanks for all the work that NEHMA did.
Cool. Thank you, Jordan. We also have with us tonight Addison, who is one of our partners for this evening. We partner with Arts Our Core here at USU. So we're going to turn just a couple minutes over to Addison to tell us about their programming.
Hi, yes, we get to collaborate with NEHMA pretty often. We're housed both in the education department at USU and the King College of the Arts. And we actually have some upcoming workshops as well that you can find on our website. I'm pretty certain it's actually just Google Utah State University Arts Our Core and our website will come up. We have one coming up on February 17th, a Chicago-based artist, William Estrada. He's doing an art making workshop, making comics through the exploration of life science. And then we have, let's see, Marianne Lee from Tanner Dance on March 24th. She'll be doing an online workshop with us, and she's just fabulous. And then this summer, we haven't released the date yet. We have an online it's going to be online again this year, Arts Our Core conference. And I think last summer we had about 140 people came, and you get relicensure points for that. And we make it as interactive as possible, and we have concurrent sessions and all kinds of good things. So if you have a chance, check out our website to see all the things we're doing. And yeah, we hope to see you at some of our workshops.
Awesome. Thanks, Addison. So, like I said, we're so excited to have you all with us. We have a couple of housekeeping things, just so you all know. This meeting is being recorded, and all of the recordings from Evenings for Educators will be available either on the Springville Museum of Art website or on our website. We're not really sure where that's going to end up, probably at Springville. So right now I have everybody muted. If you would love to show us your beautiful face on video, we would love to see it. If you're more comfortable turning your video off, that's entirely up to you. We will be monitoring the chat box. If you have any questions, if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, feel free. If you want to raise your hand, however you feel comfortable. We want this to be as interactive as we can here on Zoom. Let's see. So we are going to take 2 short breaks, and we'll let you know when that happens so we can all get up and stretch and get a drink and whatnot. But otherwise, we are going to just jump right in. So normally when we host you here at NEHMA, we would spend some time touring the museum, going through the galleries, taking a look at the current exhibitions. And since I felt it wouldn't be the most fun for you, for me to carry a computer through the galleries to show you what we've got going on, we have created a couple of little videos to explore our current exhibitions. So we are actually going to start with one of those videos. Just so you know, if you're looking to learn more about our exhibitions here at NEHMA, we do have these really fun virtual tours on our website now where you can go into an exhibit space, you can click around, you can zoom in on different pieces of art, and those are really fun. They're on the exhibitions page of our website. So let's take a look at our first exhibition. Let me figure out how to do this. It's not letting me share my screen. There we go. All right, can we all see this? Hopefully, in theory.
I can't hear anything. I don't know if the sound is muted or what.
All right, let me try this again. All right, can we see it now and hear it?
Hi everybody, welcome to our exhibit. This is Women, Surrealism, and Abstraction, celebrating women artists and the beautiful work that they do. Within this exhibit, we have a second little project focused on poetry. We invited women poets to come pick their favorite piece of art and create an original poem about it. The poems are here in the gallery, and they're also available as audio tours in the gallery and online. We're going to talk a little bit more about the poetry project later, but for now, enjoy the exhibition. Drawn exclusively from the museum collection, Women's Surrealism and Abstraction endeavors to look beyond typical art historical boundaries and begin to lay claim to a more holistic and complex view of art history, one that includes parties left out because of aesthetic biases based on a system of privileged white male patrimony. Until more recently, women of color, especially Native American women, have rarely been included in art historical studies focusing on surrealism and abstraction. In addition, artists who work in ceramics, fiber arts, photography, and printmaking, rather than painting and sculpture, are often left out of these studies as well. However, surrealism and abstraction offered women a glimpse of a world in which creative activity and liberation from societal expectations coexisted, allowing them to embark on the difficult path to artistic freedom. Poetry has a long tradition of drawing inspiration from the visual arts. In that spirit, and in the spirit of an exhibition celebrating women's talents and creativity, we invited women from the local poetry community to choose an artwork from the exhibition and write a poem inspired by it. These surrealist and abstract artworks provoke us to see and wonder in new ways. The same is true of poems, which offer glimpses into the poet's personal responses to the art. In this way, the pairings of words and imagery bring the women in conversation with each other, a dialogue that reaches across art forms and across time.
Stained Glass in the Desert's Chapel by Jordan Forrest. If the desert were a god, I would worship from within her, and instead of stained glass, she will tell stories through sage branches and the pink belly of sky. The coyote's call will be her hymn, and I will sing it, deep from the chest, neck bowed back to the moon. The primal sound of my worship catching the wind and touching everything on its way to horizon. There will be nothing to confess since nothing could hide, and I would repent palms up, chapped lips to the ground, whispering for mercy with the brush. I would know how to be silent in prayer, would recognize the voice of divinity as the quiet behind the wren and in the shadow of the yucca. And standing still in her repetition of Shatskill or Cliff Rose, I would believe in eternity. My God, I would say, look at the mountains and tell me this ever began.
You're muted.
I promise that will not be the last time I do that this evening. I'm really bad at unmuting myself. So that particular exhibition, Women's Surrealism and Abstraction, is in our large gallery on the main floor, and it will actually be up through December of this year. So it's going to be in for the long haul, and we have had a lot of really fun discussions about the art. We've had some fun field trips, kids come in, and we've really found some interesting ways to use that exhibition to teach. So a couple of the things we do down there are we teach about what abstraction and surrealism are. Obviously, we have a couple of artworks we pull out to have specific discussions about, which is always fascinating. Kids have the most interesting insights into art, and they see things that I never would have thought of. But we also play a couple of different games, actually. We play the game Telestrations, which is kind of like telephone / Pictionary, as a way to talk about surrealist thought and how that progresses. We have had some trial and error figuring out ways to play games with social distancing, and that's been an interesting journey, but we've finally come up with the best ways to do that. And we have used the poetry quite a bit to find ways to engage the students with the art in that way, using words, using poetry. We've done a couple of projects with students actually creating poems in the galleries right there on the spot, and the things that they come up with. Again, always interesting. So tonight we are going to dive into poetry for just a few minutes. I think there's 8 or 9 pieces of art with poetry attached, one of which we heard in the video. And some of them we've used quite a bit with kids and some of them we haven't. But tonight we're going to be a little bit creative on our own, come up with our own poems that you can then share with us. You can keep them for yourself. That's entirely up to you. We're going to do what's called found poetry. Some of you may have heard of this before. For some, it might be new. But this kind of poetry is created by taking words, phrases, and sometimes whole passages from already printed sources and reframing them to tell your own story, to tell your own poem. So in the packet of art supplies that hopefully all of you received, I'm really, really hopeful they all got there, we sent you several book pages. And I'll tell you, as a dedicated bibliophile, it was almost heartbreaking to take books apart, but it was really fun to use them to create art. So you should have 3 pages, 3 different sizes, 3 different types of paper. And that was very deliberate because I wanted to try out some different mediums on the different paper and see how it worked. So what we're going to do with this is pick your favorite page. I will tell you that the largest page is from an adult novel, so it's going to have different words on it than the medium and the small page. The medium and small are both from young adult / children's novels. I was trying to pick something with simple language with not a lot of pictures. One is from The Incredible Journey, which I think is great. One of them is from a book I'd never heard of called The Man Who Didn't Believe in Ghosts. That just was kind of a fun story. So if you pick your page, I'm going to give you a few minutes to sort of read through it. Obviously, it won't make a lot of sense, but to look for the words, the phrases that stand out to you that could become a story, it could become a poem. Maybe it's a haiku, maybe it rhymes, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's more about feeling, maybe it's more about a sense of self or a sense of wish. There's really no wrong way to write poetry, which I appreciate. And so I'm going to give you, a couple minutes, pick your page, get your pencil, and circle some words that you would be interested in using in your poem.
Now, do you want ketchup and A1?
I wouldn't mind a little. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow, this is a ton. Is there enough?
All right, how we doing? Did we all find our words in our poem? It's random book page from a book. So once you've chosen your words, there's a couple of different things that you can actually do with this. One is you can do what's called a blackout poem, where you literally color the entire page except for the words you want. I did this with a Sharpie. I have seen people do it with paint, whatever kind of material works for you and on that piece of paper. You can also turn that page into art itself. This right here is one. The artwork is very rudimentary. I'm not an artist by profession, but using just those words, again, you're filling in most of the page, leaving just the poem visible. And lastly, you can not cover the entire page, but use images to illustrate what the poem is about on the page itself. So there's really no, like I say, no wrong way to do this. It's been really interesting to try different methods, to try different materials, to sort of find a different way to represent the poem that I've created, or to even change the one, right? This one kind of changed the way I felt about the words that I picked when I started to draw and to create the art out of it. So this is something that I am excited to use more with students, to give them a page and say, what kinds of words can you find? What is your reaction to that? How can you turn that into art? As opposed to what we've been doing so far, which is showing them the art first and connecting the poetry to that. And we're going to take a few more minutes to create some art with our poems. And if anybody wants to share what they've created, please feel free. We'd love to see it.
Michelle, now that you showed us your picture, I am finding more visually artistic words that jump out to me differently. Like, you know, like she darted out the door into a haze of snow. Like that, I feel like I can make my whole page, like my whole picture about that sentence or something. Or I have, there were brand new wooden fishing lures that were carved and painted to look like minnows. One was yellow and red, the other was silver and black. I can make my whole page like about different fishing lures or something. But now that you showed me yours, I feel like I could like wrap my mind around an idea better.
That's awesome. Thanks. Yeah, I'm very visual. I have to sort of see what people are talking about. So I looked at a lot of sort of examples before I started, and it made a big difference.
You must have picked a great page for me.
Well, that's good, because it was completely random.
They're all good pages, so like I didn't have mine in front of me. I sat down, worried about my art materials that I was going to demo in a minute, and didn't grab my book pages. So I used like the back side of my lesson plan, and it actually made kind of a cool poem by itself.
That's
Talked
awesome.
about creativity and persistence and vulnerable until you die. So anything makes a good one, apparently.
I think it'd be really fun to use newspapers or even magazines for this kind of project. To use a current events article, I think would be interesting to see what you can pull out of that in a newspaper.
I've been asking for all of my librarian's books that she is weeding out. And so now I know what to do with them. I'm excited.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good. Yeah, I got these at DI, the great place to go and get old books. And it took me a long time to find the right ones because I got too busy reading the books. And then I was like, no, this is about the paper. This is about the size. I just got too excited to read the books. Oh, and Sierra shared with us, she gets books from the dollar store. I had forgotten to even look at the dollar store.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So do you think, like, not having done it before, do you think the first time my words were sort of random and didn't necessarily have anything to do with each other, but like someone else just mentioned, do you think if you go back and now I'm like, oh, I might pick different words that sort of gel together. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're trying to do art or something, or when you're doing your art that kind of work better together, or does it matter?
I think it's going to be a little bit different for each person. The first one I ever did, I had that sort of same reaction. I originally circled things and then I stopped and thought, wait, is this really what I want to create art with? So I went back and changed some things. That's why I always start with a pencil and then move on to markers and crayons and paint or whatnot. Just because I feel like when you start something, you have an idea in your head, but that idea can quickly change based on what you're feeling in that moment or what you started to experiment with.
What would be interesting is to give every student the same page and see how much different words come out at different people and what they do with the same text.
I like that idea a lot. It's amazing how different people view the same thing, which we talk a lot about in the galleries with Field Trip, is that we're all looking at the same piece of art, but it speaks to each of us so differently.
Quick question about, I know this seems probably so amateur, but I'm wondering how you got them out of the books so nicely. Like X-Acto knife, what did you, like, any tricks there?
Yeah, first I broke the binding, which again kind of hurt me a little bit personally. And then I did have an X-Acto knife that I was using. One of them was heavily glued, so I ended up literally cutting off the bits of glue on the spine. One, I was able to just snip the stitches, taking it apart section by section, snipping the stitches and then cutting them apart. I think if you had a really heavy duty paper cutter that you could take the covers and the spine off and just set it in there and chop, I think that would work as well. I feel like it's kind of trial and error depending on the book. Each book I took apart was a little bit different. All right, well, does anybody want to hold up their beautiful poem and share with us? If not, feel free to keep working on it. We are going to shift gears a little bit because I'm loving this discussion. I'm loving all up to hearing from you. I'm reading some really fun things in the chat, so feel free to keep adding. So as I say, we're going to shift gears. So we have our Surrealism and Abstraction and Poetry exhibition. It's going to be up all year. But we also have some new exhibitions that are currently going in. They're being installed as we speak. They're meant to open tomorrow. And so I'm going to play you another short little video that is about those exhibitions. I couldn't walk you around the spaces because when I was creating the video, not much was on the walls, but I have picked out some of my favorite pieces of artwork to share with you. And I'm really excited for those exhibitions to open. So if you're anywhere near Logan, please come see us. They're going to be so fun and they're just beautiful. So let me go ahead and set up this second exhibition. Go. Hi everyone, welcome back to the galleries. We have 3 new exhibitions going in right now, so everything is a little bit under construction. The 3 exhibitions are Barns, Cows, Tractors, Horses, Hay, and Farmers, which comes from the museum's collection.
The second is 3 Depression-era photographers in Utah, mostly portraits. And the third is a traveling exhibition organized by Exhibits USA called American Farmer. We're very excited to have these 3 agriculturally themed exhibitions on view, and we hope that you'll check it out as soon as it opens. Farming and agriculture, the activities that feed us, are not usually the focus of landscape and outdoor paintings. However, artists constantly find bucolic farming and pastoral scenes an intriguing mix of nature and humanity. Celebrating agriculture through art, barns, cows, tractors, horses, hay, and farmers, focuses on painting, prints, and sculptures from the museum's collection. Instead of depicting landscapes devoid of human presence, these works of art reflect humanity's imprint on the land in various ways. This exhibition presents a selection of these changes reflected in art. Also included in this exhibition is a timeline that marks the milestones of USU's contributions to the development of agriculture in this country and elsewhere. Dorothea Lange, Russell Lee, and Arthur Rothstein are the 3 photographers who were hired by the Farm Security Administration to document rural Utah in the 1930s. The portraits of agricultural workers and their families, and the land they worked, provide a unique picture of Utah's rural past. Lange, Lee, and Rothstein, all well-known photographers when they were hired for this project, took their photographs in rural towns and counties in Utah, and these photographs include imagery of Box Elder and Cache counties, as well as Escalante, Santa Clara, Washington, and Whitso, Utah. The portraits they created were disseminated nationally in Life, Look, and Survey Graphic magazines. The exhibition is comprised of 34 photographs from the museum collection. American Farmer celebrates the living spirit of our heartland through the faces and voices of the people who keep it alive. Featuring 45 color and black and white portraits, in addition to interviews with farmers from across the United States, from ranchers to strawberry growers, American Farmer tells the inspiring stories of the stewards of this land. When photographer Paul Mobley set out to capture the soul of our country's farm communities, he encountered an enduring rural culture that remains rooted in the principles of tradition, family, integrity, and hard work. His images show farmers with a strong sense of where they belong in the universe, a close connection to the land and their day-to-day work as it affects the rest of the world. American Farmer is a traveling exhibition organized by Exhibits USA.
All right. So those are the new exhibitions that are going in that we are so excited about. And I'm actually going to turn a little bit of time over to Allison Decker, who does most of the planning of the fantastic programs that we do here in the museum. So she's going to tell us a little bit about what we have planned for these exhibitions.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for the introduction to the upper galleries. I'm going to pause before I do that and ask, Addison, did you still want to say something about Arts Our Core? Did we do that at the beginning, Michelle?
Yeah, we did. Yes. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So we're loving these 3 exhibits because they are so curriculum friendly. They're really a perfect fit for history and social studies strands. They're, about location affecting the development of an area and the government and community relationships, industrialization, like it never ends. There's so much here to talk about curriculum wise. And also they're accessible, they're relatable, they're faces, they're places kids know, they may have driven past. It's farming, it's food, it's things you know about. So it's really exciting to see these shows coming in. So you can access a virtual tour and images through our website. We do have several things that we're doing here, and I'm going to tell you about them. You can adapt them into your own classroom If any of them interest you, we would love to Zoom into your classroom and help facilitate a lesson. If you're within an hour of the museum, we would love to see you in person. We still are doing in-person visits, and we can close down the museum while you're here to make sure that we don't go over capacity of what's safe for our spaces in the gallery, and we do pay for busing. So those are all options in addition to the online tours. So one of the things we're talking about is giving these people a voice. So one way we're doing that is with little speech bubble Post-it notes and a prompt. So you can kind of tell us what these people would be saying if they could speak right here. The portraits really showcase individuality in American Farmer of the subjects and actually the Depression era photographers. You get a sense of kind of a rich life, a personality, a backstory. And the idea of the caption is to kind of let us know what these portraits might want to say if they could. So you could do this easily in your own classroom with the images you find on our website. So we also have a Nearpod lesson that's related to this show as well. That's going to be kind of a plug and play that you can use in your classroom. Nearpod is one of the interactive slideshow platforms that are great for distance learning, because you can set it up to be student-paced, or they're great just to keep kids engaged with in-person learning as well. We have an art challenge. We always like to do a making project along with the shows, and when we have people interact with the artwork to give a way for them to express back. And this one is dealing with the Depression era photography exhibit. And after studying those photographs and a little bit of Depression history for context, the students are invited to think about how these places may look differently now. As mentioned in the video, many of there are communities in Utah where we may have been, we may have seen. And what does it look like now? Does it look the same? Is it different? Are we just talking about they're using more updated farming, or are we talking about there's a freeway there or a truck stop there? Like, how has the land in Utah changed? And this is a diptych project where they have a larger piece from the past and a smaller piece from the present inset, so that they can really think about that as they create their art and have a little more discussion and a visual discussion as well. One more resource that is new to NEHMA this year to try to help those that are learning from home is our escape rooms. So they're a virtual experience. You're looking for clues as you go through the galleries. You have to solve puzzles and word games and learn content from videos, all sorts of things. They're really rich with content. We have a couple of those up now. They're really meant for university kids. And we have one related to the upstairs exhibits that will be for high school kids. That will be fun. I'd love to hear your feedback of what you think about those. Those will be up shortly. So, all right, I'm trying to look and see, are we still busy with found poems? Because I'm ready to get you started on project number 2. We're just going to jump right into the second project. So we are going to do an abstract self-portrait. And you're going to learn quickly from our guest artist that drawing is easy, but you might have some people in class that are not really comfortable with being creative, and maybe they're intimidated by that, and maybe you don't have time to teach all of the proportions, but you want people to think about themselves and visual expression. This is a quicker abstract portrait project that you can do that kind of highlights what's going on the inside of you rather than the outside of you. The reason I like something a little bit as an option for a little bit more process-based is that every answer is the right answer. Everyone's going to be satisfied with the result. No one's going to be like, oh, it doesn't look like me, or whatever it might be. And you still get to do a self-portrait. So let's go ahead and get started. So you will need your materials, your watercolor paints, your brushes, your water, and also some paper for brainstorming. And we're going to think about what makes you unique. We're going to look at some professional artwork for inspiration. And we're also going to finally paint a creative abstract self-portrait to represent us. So the first thing I want you to do is think about who you are. Who are you? I want you to brainstorm. I'd love for you to put down 5 words on your scrap paper, not on your watercolor paper. 5 words to describe who you are. We have 2 versions of this lesson plan. One talks more about identity and labels that you might have or that society might give to you. And one talks just more about like self-reflection and who you are based on age group. So we'll share both of those with you. So now I want you to read your words. Do you think that they're an accurate description of you? Think a little bit broader now. Think about your interests, your relationships, maybe your likes and dislikes, what you spend your time each week doing. Add a couple more words if you need to. Now check out your list. We want an accurate description of you. So first of all, are they all positive words? If any of them are not positive words, you can take those off. And also scratch out any that you don't think really best describe you. They're not the biggest part of you that you want to talk about. You should have about 5 to 7 most important words left. When you're satisfied, kind of watching to see if you guys are still working or if you've got something. We'll move on to the next step, okay, when you're satisfied. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is think about the colors, the textures, the lines, and the shapes that would best describe the words on your paper. So let me demonstrate for you. On my paper, I've got the word teacher and I've got the word mother. So I think what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to make sure that I have some shapes that are repeated in a large form and then a small form to show that I spend a lot of time with young people. So I'm going to have long lines and short lines, or big triangles and little triangles to represent being a teacher. Another word that I have on there is outdoors. So I really love to be outside, and I got to think of I think I'm going to pick mountains. I do love to be in the mountains. My favorite place in the world is a lake that we go to in Idaho. That's my happy place all the time, is the lake. So I'm going to think of the colors of green and nature and outdoors, and I'm going to put that into my painting. So I'm going to have large and small shapes, and I'm going to have the color green predominant. And then the other thing I put on there was I'm kind of just like content, kind of like pretty happy most of the time. So calm and content. I think how I'm going to do that is with horizontal lines. Horizontal lines usually are more restful lines, and I'm going to show you some things in a minute to help you pick the lines that might work for you. So, and I think I'm going to, because I'm not like super bubbly kind of person, I think I'm going to keep my colors kind of muted. So for the calmness, I'm going to kind of gray out my colors. So horizontal lines, green, big shapes, small shapes, and grayed out colors. I have a pretty good idea of what my picture's going to look like already. Let me show you. I've got these color and line resources that you can use. I need to share my screen. Oh, so Michelle, do you want to let me share my screen?
Yes, hang on just a second.
Thanks. I have a little bit of artwork that I want to show, and then I'll show these couple of resources.
All right, try and share.
Got it. Hey, thank you. All right. Okay, so these are attached onto the lesson plan, and you can kind of take a look at these. You can just stick them out on the tables and let kids talk about it if you haven't talked about color theory. If you've already talked about this, you know, depending on what grade you teach and where you are in the year and in the curriculum, maybe there's some things here that they can relate to and say, you know, I don't know what to do, but I do have a lot of energy. I'm so fun and cheerful, so I'm going to put a lot of yellow in mine. And then here is something to help you understand line. Artists know how we perceive line, and they use that to their advantage to tell us the story they want to tell, and they're experts at it. Abstract artists are, this is what they do. So when you look at vertical lines straight up and down, it's like a cityscape. It's tall, it's unshakable, it reaches to the sky. And the horizontal lines are a little more restful, okay? They remind you of a long horizon or laying down, right? They're kind of a calmness, stability. These zigzag lines, they've got action and kind of a restlessness. And diagonal lines suggest kind of, oh, we're tipping over, a lack of stability. Curved lines are more organic. They talk about change. They talk about the body. They represent more living things. So you can use that as inspiration. You can sometimes, I'll just stick them out on the tables, let the kids use them as they want so they don't feel like they get stuck on that too much. But the most important thing is that there is really, you're the expert on you. So there's no wrong answers. If you have a reason why you want to choose the line you want to choose, you do that. That's a great thing about abstraction here. So we're going to use these words, and later in our art project, you can put that, okay, we're going to use these words later in our art project, but for now, I kind of want you to put the words aside. And we're going to look at some art, have a little art discussion. Rather than just drawing a regular picture of ourselves, we're going to have to get creative. We're going to make a picture that shows who we are on the inside, rather than what we look like on the outside. After all, it's what's on the inside that counts. That's what we hear. So our personalities, our likes and dislikes, even our dreams, or what we hope to be on the inside, our talents, can tell a lot more about who we are, and maybe more about like the shape of our nose tells about us, or the color of our eyes. So these are going to tell a lot about us. So let's look at a few ways that professional artists have talked about themselves. And that might give us some inspiration as well. So these are all artworks from our permanent collection. This piece right here is autobiographical. So DI are actually the artist's initials. It's not the donation center, right? So I'd love to hear what you have to say about this piece. What materials are we looking at here? And why might he be using wood? Why not metal? Why not plastic?
I know for me, I think about like campfires when I think of wood. And that brings a lot of memories of camping with my family.
Okay, maybe it's a memory for him. Good, yeah. And hey, there's a lot of, I like that you brought that up. There's a lot of energy in that wood. Like it could light up. So maybe that has something to do with it. Good. It's very neatly stacked inside that cabinet. Any ideas about that? We've got this glass front cabinet so we can see inside, and we've got this wood. Any other thoughts?
Well, I think it's interesting that the wood is in the cabinet and the cabinet is made of wood.
So do I, yeah.
I'm noticing a little yellow bead or something right in the middle. And I'm noticing the numbers for some reason. Oh, there's another one there.
Yep.
Oh,
so
a few. Okay, I need to look better.
Yeah, so little pops of color, right? And this DI does look like a 10. It does. So it looks kind of like numbers. We've got these tiny pops of color. Most of it's very organic colored. Good. What else are we noticing?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I was just thinking that because we can see everything inside, this person's an open book. They don't they don't mind wearing their heart on their sleeve, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Great thoughts. Great
But
thoughts.
also keeping themselves kind of secure inside, tucked as well.
It is controlled. It's definitely controlled, right? Because it's stacked.
Maybe this.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, maybe this person is a gatherer. They gather ideas, gather family history, something.
Good
Organize
thought.
it.
I think it's kind of cool, the contrast of the raw wood here, this very natural, and then you're contained inside this form that's been created and mastered and all nailed together and everything. Super nice. Anyway, I like the juxtaposition of both of them.
Awesome. These are great thoughts, you guys. These are great thoughts. I love that about our collection. It's very thought-provoking and it's good. It gets discussion going. I'm going to read you some answers I got last time I was in high school with this. This is high school answers. They said, he used to be alive, but now he's dead. A little grim, but he has a lot of dangerous energy inside. He's being controlled and subdued by the cabinet. He feels exposed. He's trying to be perfect. So lots of different thoughts bringing themselves into the artwork. Let me tell you a little bit, just a little artist connection about David Ireland. So David Ireland was really interested in the fact that an artist's signature may be the most important part of an artwork as far as determining the monetary value or how much it's worth. And he thought that was pretty interesting and started exploring that idea by using his initials as like a prominent visual element in his artwork. So good, very good. Let's look at another one. This piece is called Bracelet. Let's start by describing what you see. Can you tell what material we have here?
Metal?
It does look very metallic. It's broken mirror. So it's broken up mirror and reconstructed into this shape. Do you recognize?
Skull.
Skull.
Yeah, we've got a skull and a spine, over exaggerated skull and spine. When you come to the museum, this piece is usually up and it rotates. It rotates around and catches the light and kind of flicks the light around like a disco ball. What do you think he's trying to tell us about himself or about people?
He reflects things from the person to that back to them.
Very cool. Could be.
At our core, we shine.
I like that.
I would say he's a chameleon. He reflects what's around him, but the skull at the bottom, maybe he's not liking that at the same time.
Oh, yeah. We've got just the essentials here, don't we? Like your skull and your spine, you can't live without those. Yeah,
And
so that's very, very interesting.
Upside down. It's upside down.
Mm-hmm.
Can the skull become a memento mori or represent memento mori?
Very interesting. Great thoughts, guys. Great thoughts. So let's see. Martin Carcellis, he's a sculptor, a photographer. He's a performance artist. He does installation. He does everything. And he likes to explore the idea of the human condition. And most of his artwork is related to that, being human, what it's like to be a human, particularly movement. So this piece is stunning when you see it on display. Sometimes they'll build walls around it so you can see how the light reflects off of the walls. So I've got one more. We'll move a little quicker because I gotta give you guys time to make your art. This is by an artist named Mel Robson. Now, Mel Robson does this paper thin porcelain and paints it so you can see it from both sides. And it might be hard to tell what you're seeing here, but these lines are a map. And they're a map of her grandma's neighborhood. This is a series of bowls. The other bowl has recipes written on it. So recipes from her grandma and a map of her grandma's neighborhood. That might be a great way to describe a grandma. To me it is. It's all about grandma's house and what grandma cooks. So you might think about maybe a food helping to represent you, or a place where you love, or a place where you live helping to represent you. So, all right. All right, now we need to get to our picture making. Let's see if I can. Excuse me while I adjust my camera. Scoot my stuff out of the way. So you're going to get your watercolor paints out. Is my camera doing okay? It looks a little blurry to me.
It's okay.
I'm just making it worse. All right. So you're going to get your watercolor paints out. I kind of have a sense of what mine's going to look like. I'm going to keep my words really close by so that I can let that guide me as I paint. I'm going to show you two different techniques that you might want to employ. This is a wet on wet technique, and these colors are blending because I put water all over the whole picture first, just plain water, just wet water with no color. And then as you add the watercolor paints in, they blend together and they kind of do this really smooth connection to one another. This is a dry technique of watercolor. This, I just made these lines by dipping them in and painting like you would with any kind of paint. So try experimenting and exploring with those two ways and see what you can do to create yourself in an abstract painting. I'll work here as well while you guys work. Watercolors need water, so make sure you get your paints nice and wet before you start. And typically I feel like I'm with elementary age kids, so I make them swirl it around 5 times before they go to a new color. And I make them count out loud. That way you know they're not mixing colors. I'm going to start by doing a big wet on wet section over here. You just paint along. Michelle, we should have some music. I should have thought of that.
We should have. I don't know if I can cue any up fast enough, but
yeah, I don't know. You're welcome to try. I'm like not very savvy, so I won't dare, but.
Is there a genre of music you'd like?
Say that again.
Is there a type of music that you'd like?
Anything, whatever inspires you. Lay it on us. We'd love it. Thank you. I love it. It's coming through great. Okay, I'm going to have you pause the music. I'm satisfied with my experimentation here. I did have to change. Hey, artists change their mind as they go, and that's important. But I'm going to stop with that. And we're going to take a break right now, so you can keep working, or if you need to get up and refill your coffee or your Diet Coke or your water or answer the text or whatever it is, you can do that. So I'll go ahead and start a break time. But I want you to do one thing for me. When you're finished with this painting of yourself, please snap a picture and email it to Michelle, because the second component that we're going to try is to do a virtual mosaic of all of us. So we've got a collective portrait of all of us. So you've probably done this before with a group mural project where everybody does a little piece, and it can still be done if you're virtually learning. So send us an email of that. Michelle's going to put that into it like a mosaic pattern. If your class theme was a tree, you could put it in the shape of a tree, or, inside an emoji face, or whatever is appropriate for your age. So when you get finished with yours, go ahead and send it to Michelle. She's got her email in the chat. And we're going to go ahead and start a little video break for you. Let me set this up for you. While we were all at home, we were looking for ways to make art out of materials that we had at home if we couldn't get out. And we reached out to this artist who has made quite a name for himself with peanut butter and jelly sandwich art, if you can believe that. It really kind of took off in the LA area. And so we collaborated with him with the museum. He does a lot of making art out of discarded objects. And so we created this little at-home creativity field trip. So we'll play that. It's 13 minutes long. We'll have a little timer up so you know how you're doing on your break. Continue working, send an email, do whatever you need to do, and enjoy the break. Thank you.
Also, during your break, you could just make sure you filled out the Google form for attendance. Just another little plug for that. I'll send that form again.
Definitely. You all need to fill that. Looking for our points, right?
Thank you.
All right, so here we go. I'm going to share this video. And there we are. We'll see you in about 13 minutes.
I don't have sound, Michelle. If you're muted, then it might be muted.
Hi, everybody. My name is Seth Kaufman. I'm a professional artist living and working in Los Angeles. I have a private studio practice, and I teach art and design at Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, California. And I've been doing that, teaching sculpture for about 17 years. I've never not made art. I've been making art since I was a little boy. Both of my parents were very interested and supporters of the arts, and my mother was a calligrapher, and she did illuminated manuscripts. She was a classically trained calligrapher. So I learned a lot about composition and discrete forms through her. And ironically, I have terrible penmanship. It's the world around us. It's just the stuff in our lives. I call it stuff. And I'm attracted by physicality. I think there's this idea of redemption, which is finding value in the thing that has little value, or sometimes finding value in the thing that has no value, or even better, finding value in the thing that is a negative value. And for years I made sculptures out of paint chips, and I would climb up on old buildings and scrape the paint chip off the buildings. And that paint is definitely not of just little or no value, but it's actually a detriment, especially if it's lead-based paint, because people have to pay to get it abated. So when people would see me scraping lead-based paint off of their building, they were thrilled to see it happening because they would have to pay to take it off. And I would find value in it, find value in the thing that most people would see as a blight, and then use it in lovely ways. I would find old paint at Home Depot. They were called mispaint. If somebody would have a paint bucket mixed of a certain color, discover it was the wrong color, and then not want to buy it. And I would buy it for pennies on the dollar. And I would mix it up and pour it in with a bunch of dirt and throw it in the ground and let it set up and make these crazy sort of prehistoric looking colorful geodes. They were quite lovely. And then, great question. Simple answer. The first answer is simple. Have fun. That's it. Have fun. You having a good time? Have a good time. Eggshell crates, old boxes of cereal, cardboard lying around, bottle caps, plastic jar lids, anything. Tape it together, hot glue it together, stack it. If you're enjoying yourself, that's going to be important. Beyond that, to be a little more critically minded about the use of a material, what I try to do is what I alluded to earlier, or what I referenced earlier, is how would somebody else use it? Can I think of other ways that other people might use it? And typically, if I can think of it, I try to avoid those. And then I push myself to imagine myself using a material in a way that perhaps seems odd or unconventional. And I try to pursue that line of thinking. But even then, even still, I really put a lot of value on, am I having a good time? And what you see behind me right there is a whole lot of good time. A lot of work, but a whole lot of good times. The museum has asked me a few questions in regard to my personal practice, and you can see that I'm here in front of some printed peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I take pictures of them with the iPhone, simple, and I print them on a wood material and hang them in grids because I quite like them. So I'm now in my kitchen, and this is an installation in our kitchen. I had a baby and I was home and I wasn't, going to my studio, and there were long days of watching, cartoons and feeding and naps, and I thought, oh boy, maybe my career is over. And I started, when she got older, I started making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for her, and she loved them, and I discovered that I could express my art with everyday items. And it became a really serious practice, and I quite love it. Hi everybody. Today we're going to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and I'd just like to talk to you about a few basic requirements. You don't really need much to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and you really don't need much except a little imagination to make it a little special. So we start with a cutting board. This is my mom and dad's cutting board from the early 1950s when they bought it together back in New Jersey. And I've used it in my life and was raised having meals made on it. So this is an heirloom, which is very exciting for me. And of course, we need peanut butter and we need jelly. I go to Trader Joe's and I get peanut butter and jelly there because typically they have organic. However, this is not organic, but the way things are today, you kind of get what's available at the store. I like to use creamy because it cuts better. Personally, I like chunky peanut butter. I like big chunks of things, but the creamy is really much better for making really good, clean shapes. The other thing we need is a good spreading knife and a good cutting knife. I like the spreading knife because it's a wide, broad surface, and I like the cutting knife because it's slightly serrated and has a very tiny blade, which gives me really good, tight radiuses. Now, of course, let's not forget the bread. I have a little freezer here, and I like to use the Milton's bread. It's organic, multi-grain, so it's a really healthy bread. And I just took it out of the freezer. I like to use a frozen bread because it cuts better and holds together better and allows me to make really nice, clean cuts. And then, of course, by the time I'm done, it thaws out. I also like to have a towel with me to keep my surfaces clean. And then sometimes when I'm making really neat shapes, I like to have little templates. And a template could be something as simple as a glass, a bowl. I can put it down and I can cut around it. I can use a plate. Or I can use things just from the drawer, just shapes, lids for things. This is a little squeegee for squeegeeing out bowls. Now, being a professional artist, I have some really fancy templates. This is obviously for making circles, and I have one for making squares. And this is one of my favorites. It's ovals. An oval is a pretty hard shape to cut just without any kind of a template. Then I have these artist templates, which are really beautiful. This is called a French curve, and I have different sizes. This is a really cute little one. And I use these occasionally, you know, if I want to get a really neat little angle. And then I just have a little right angle, which is quite nice. And I can use it as a straight edge or use it as an angle. So those are my basic tools. And now we have to cut a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
All right. That always makes me want to go and eat a peanut butter sandwich. It always makes me hungry whenever I watch him do that. So, welcome back. I'm loving seeing the emails come in with your beautiful watercolors. So I will get those all put together, and at the end of our night, I'll show them to you all beautiful and mosaic together. So now we have reached the part of our evening that I'm honestly most excited about. We have an amazing guest artist who's joining us to teach us about drawing portraits. So I'm proud to introduce Jan Haworth. She is closely associated with the 60s pop art movement in Great Britain. She has had 23 solo shows in the US and Europe. She was a contributor/director for 11 public works projects in Salt Lake. Most recently, and I'm actually going to pull this up and show it to you. Most recently, a 6,000 square foot mural, which celebrates the ratification of the women's voting rights in 1920. And there it is there. It's just beautiful. You can go to the website and check it out and learn so much more about it. She holds 2 unusual distinctions. She's a female pop artist and co-designer for the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper album cover, for which she received a Grammy. And I am just so excited for her to be here tonight to teach us some amazing things. So if you've got your materials there in front of you, go ahead and pull them out. And Jan, I'm going to turn the time over to you.
Me there. Can you hear me
There you
now?
are. Yes.
Okay. Hello, and it's lovely to be here with you. And it was really interesting to see everything building up to now. And I hope you're not too exhausted, but we'll have some fun too. I am so pleased, Michelle, that you had such a lovely, perfect contrast for me to bounce off of. You know, having an abstract end to this discussion is really great, because there's a lot to say about the distinction between being very accurate with your drawing and being very expressive on the other end of the you know, sort of way that we make art. And I think in the classroom, it's very important to open those 2 extremes to kids, because their work can travel, if we think of it as a linear journey between those 2 points and interchangeably, and thinking about, you know, abstract and accuracy. It's always great to make the point that accuracy is only one end of what we do, and expression is the other end. And learning something about both of those extremities really establishes a line of freedom that young people can move between. And so what we're going to do today is, with the work I'll be talking about, excuse me, is to try to do something really accurate. It's more like mathematics than creative, expressive, free art. And I think it's important to establish that it actually is quite easy. It's not a mysterious talent. I don't ever use the word talent, because I think everybody can do this. Everybody can learn, let's say, to draw the letter A, which in fact is a drawing. We have an image in our mind of what an A looks like. We have to be accurate about the angles. If we did an A like this, we might not be so very sure it was an A. So the idea of drawing being something we actually know quite a lot about before we actually enter a drawing exercise, I think is a point that can be made with kids. I realize that we are probably working with teachers who may be teaching 2nd grade or high school. So there are some caveats to that I think children under 7 are really very expressive in the way that they do art. And it's wonderful to capture that. The accuracy can be frustrating to kids at that point, but I'll show you some ideas sort of towards the end of how you can bring the youngest of the children into a kind of beginning focus on how to do something accurately. Above 7, I think that is the place where most people stop drawing. They stop being able to achieve what their mind can see. So they give up on accurate drawing, and they may move towards abstraction or towards projects that are a little bit more expressive. But my point would be that the objective with learning to draw accurately is that it gives you entire freedom, because actually what you do is you establish the fact that you can think something and actually draw it, or see something and actually draw it accurately. And that's a kind of baseline, like learning to spell, like learning to compute and add numbers, and like, you know, thinking in terms of writing. When we learn to write, we're not writing poetry at the first stages usually. What's happening is we have to, you know, kind of work our way through our spelling, work our way through our handwriting so that somebody can read it. And drawing is like that. So the first exercise I want to do with you, we won't finish it. It will be something that will make a start, and then we'll leave off just given the time that we have for the second part of the exercise. So here, I hope you can see, this is going to be the basis of the first drawing we do, and this will be the basis of the second. I would tell you the story of how this came about because it's an invention of my own. It happened when I was on my way to a school in American Fork, and I'd been teaching and doing residencies in schools quite a lot. I started an arts and crafts school in England. I had, you know, programs running up the Sundance Art Shack for kids. So I had a lot of experience in this area. And I was kind of bored with the way I was teaching it, and my lesson plan was all done. I was going to be at the school for 2 weeks, and I was going to produce a series of drawings with kids having about an hour each day with about 5 groups. But as I say, I felt I'd done it so many times and there must be a better way of doing it. And I was driving along in my Wrangler and I thought, I wonder, and this idea suddenly popped into my head that I'm going to show you in a minute. I wonder if that would work. I mean, it was a terrible risk because I'd never tried it before. The artwork that I was doing was supposed to go towards a children's festival. So if we ended up with nothing, it wasn't going to be too good. But I decided to try it and I decided to take the risk. And I think probably all art is about that. And we mustn't forget that children are adventurous, but sometimes they have the same kind of hesitancy I had in setting out on this idea. So what I'm going to show you here is a pretty straightforward idea. And really, I think it's something that can be communicated in 5 minutes. It's how the ramifications of it kind of play out over a period of time when you're actually working. And basically, you're turning a child into a photocopier. You don't actually want to do that. And I think it's good to say that to the kids, to say, hey, I'm going to make you a photocopier. This isn't art yet. This is accuracy. And this is giving you control over what you do. The odd consequence of this is often it feeds back into their other work and makes their other work more careful. I've had teachers come back to me and say a certain child just was struggling so much with letter formation and writing, and that after the drawing lessons, they really, their confidence and abilities really jumped up. So thinking about that, you know, there are opportunities here for other subjects to kind of cross over into this. So you take a drawing that's black and white and linear, and probably vertical and horizontal lines predominating. You can, if your kids are more advanced and you've done drawing work with them before, maybe take a butterfly or something like that that has a more curvilinear look to it, and then try to work with that as the first drawing. So you take that down to another piece of paper, and I'm going to be working with a felt pen here because you'll be able to see it better. But in the classroom, I would say, hey, work with pencil because it's just a little more accurate. And I'm just going to take a pie shape out of that piece of paper. Now there's a bit missing. Let me put the scissors there. I'm having something in the middle of my screen, so let me just get rid of that so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so here, I'm going to complete the missing bits. I'm going to make a bridge between that where the actual line is missing and a bridge between. So now it's back in there. And here I can use the symmetrical lines, the other side of the thing that is still there, to kind of remind myself of what that should look like. Or I can look at this and say, oh, okay, it's symmetrical, so I can do that. What I often do at the early stages is pick up a child's work and say, oh, can you see where this child has been working, or this young person has been working on this drawing? Because they like the kind of, they've been fooled. They don't know if this person has done any work or not, if they've done it fairly accurately. Okay, and you can use different language sort of supports here to say that you're going to be making a bridge here, or you have a nearly vertical line here, or you have an angled line here. And I think the way to support this is really talking through each problem with different children vocally, so the other children hear those problems being aired in another part of the classroom. If you have these pieces of paper and everything ready in front of you, make a start. Take just a little bit of a nick out of the drawing. Take something easy at first and just fill in the bits that have been missing. We'll spend, let me look at the clock. We'll spend 3 or 4 minutes doing that, and then we'll cut another bit, and I'll bring out an idea that may help you in terms of communicating this to younger people when they come to more difficult shapes in the actual drawing. Okay, I'll go silent for a minute and I'll work, and then we'll stop and talk again. Remember that the eraser is your best friend. Had I been doing this in pencil, I would have erased a bit there. And I think it's good to actually let kids know that erasers are fine. Sometimes in art schools, they take erasers away from students, and I think it's a big mistake, because I think it is one of those things that an eraser is your support system. I also suggest to kids that they come up with their own sort of way of doing this. In other words, if sometimes you'll find a kid will invent a new way of doing it, that they'll cut right along the line that's there and just trace along that edge. That's fine. And I think what you do is you say, this is a support, this is a crutch. If you break your leg, you use a crutch for a while. The thing to do is at some point, put the crutch down. But if they're inventing new ways of actually handling the problem, I think that's to be encouraged. And then, you know, ask them to be adventurous if they've mastered that way of doing it. And if you have kids that are very gifted, you can suggest that they cut a symmetrical drawing right in half at the very beginning, and actually just then draw the other half on the other side. So there's a kind of, you can grade this to the abilities of the students themselves, and also you can return to the same exercise and each time, add different ways of doing it because they have gained a certain level of skill sets. If you have very hesitant students, here is a little trick that will help them. When a line changes direction, and we'll meet this again when we do this portrait here, you lift the paper, you take your sharp pencil, and you poke a hole, and you make a guide point. This is something that Leonardo did, and lots of artists have done this. It's not the end, bad thing to do to cheat a little bit on what we do to support ourselves before our eye and our hand and our eye and mind are all coordinated. You can use that phrase to say you're trying to coordinate your eye, your mind, and your hand. And it's like a violin. If you don't practice it, you lose the ability. And you need to warm up to that ability on another occasion or using support mechanisms. So I've made a dot there. I know exactly where that line ends and where it turns to the diagonal line. So that gives me accuracy. It makes me feel secure. It doesn't make me feel as though I'm failing. And all those things are very important to reassure the kids as they're beginning to work on something that sometimes they don't feel that they're very good at. The most often repeated phrase that I hear when I'm teaching people to draw is, I can't draw a straight line without a ruler, and I only can draw stick figures. And I don't think many artists draw a straight line of any length without a ruler accurately either. And stick figures are actually what a lot of us do when we first lay in a figure. We'll do a head as a circle, just like a stick figure, and we'll do, instead of perhaps the body looking like that, we do an eye shape, because that's a little bit more like the actual human figure is. So you do this eye in the middle, head, arms hanging off of the top of the eye, legs coming down like that. So we start a figure as a sort of, little stick man before we put the muscles and clothes and all the rest on. So you get the idea of what we're doing here. And it's not a complex process. It's something by which you can gradually build this up with students. You can tie whatever it is that is the black and white drawing into the topic work that you're working on. If it's Incas, you could find some sort of black and white drawing that represents something to do with that culture. And that makes it something that can belong to a bigger project. It can be the artistic way in. I've found that very often if you enter a subject by visual arts, it begins to build up an interest because it is strictly visual, not verbal, and it takes you into the kind of texture and some of the output that a society has done. And it strikes us the differences between, say, that culture and other cultures that we're more familiar with. So we can leave this now. I can show you one that I did on another occasion here. And this was done in pencil. And so that little bit is remaining in the middle. Eventually, it can be something that a student can say, okay, if they're beginning to lose interest or they're speeding up too fast, you can say, slow down a bit and maybe do some decorative bits in the part that you've actually just done. And this kind of brings the changes between high accuracy and just making stuff up. And that can work very well too with a butterfly drawing, in that you have, let's say, a butterfly on one side, you cut it in half and you say, okay, just invent the other side. Maybe the butterfly becomes much more abstract. You can use this as stimulus, the drawing that you have, the realistic drawing of the butterfly, but you can just make up the other side as a contrast to it. And I think that if you are sensitive to the fact that a child is losing interest or being frustrated, you can open it out at that point and let them be more expressive with it, and then reel them back in and say, okay, let's now go back to trying to be really accurate so that we get your eye, mind, hand working in unison. All right, so looking at that, I do want to say that, you know, that we have a way of kind of, let's see how we would call this, of assessing how a child's progress goes. What I often do before I start a session, if I'm working with kids over a period of time, is I ask them to do a little drawing of a face, and I ask them to put that drawing in an envelope, which I hand out, and to seal it and to keep it. Or you can collect them up. They can put their name on the outside of it. And you keep that drawing until they have finished the project of drawing a face. And then you ask them to compare the drawing that they have done under tuition or under teaching and the original drawing they did. And I think the original drawing they did, you give them 20 minutes to do it or 15 minutes to do it, something like that. I'm just going to show you some drawings that we did from one of the projects that I did. This is the school in American Fork, and these are fourth graders, and they were working from photographs. Again, I'd like to make the point about between abstraction and realism. When I sensed that the child was having difficulties, they went to a second piece of paper and created an abstract border for their drawings, so that I gave them a little rest, a little break from being hyper accurate, and that worked very well. Again, it's a fourth grader, and we had 10 lessons of just under an hour each. Okay, so this is using the same process. And where we're moving now is that we're moving from line, which is this very, you know, striking, strong, linear rendition of something that's largely horizontal, largely vertical, to a different kind of requirement or a different kind of problem. We're going to look at a face, and this isn't linear, it's mostly shape. And so the problem is different in that we are not just having something that is black on white or pencil on white. We have tone or shape, shade rather. And so taking out bits in this case, we give ourselves a break, we make it as easy as we can. And we try to think in terms of blobs. What does that blob look like? What direction is that blob? Well, one of the directional things that's important that I think can help kids is to say, if they're familiar with the face of a clock, and I think most kids are, I hope you would agree with me. It'd be sad if we're just doing digital, but make them aware of a clock. And the hour hand. We can say that the 12 o'clock line is vertical, or it's a 6 o'clock line. So vertical lines, like we saw on the watercolor when we were talking about vertical buildings a little bit ago, vertical lines can be a 6 o'clock or a 12 o'clock line. Horizontal lines can be a 3 o'clock or a 9 o'clock. Then we go in between. We usually can think of 45 degrees. That would be 1:30. 1 o'clock line is here, 2 o'clock line is there. All right, and a 4 o'clock line is here, and a 5 o'clock line is here. And that helps us to sort of identify different directions that our shading or our tone work or our linear first positioning is. And that means that we're not kind of frightened of the line that goes in some direction that we're not quite sure of what kind of angle that is. We're very comfortable with horizontal and vertical because we live in a horizontal vertical kind of world. But when we come to curves or lines that are at an angle, we're not necessarily quite so at ease. I usually make a start on something like this with something that I consider to be really easy, which I recommend to the student. So something that is black, dark, and I'm just going to be making a bridge between the beginning and the end of where this should be. I'm just filling in from the end to the one end to the other there. So that pigtail is going to be filled in with black. So lots of pressing down of the pencil, and then it's back. And that is the process. You go on and on, taking little bits away. I often work with third graders, and the third graders are just on that cusp of they don't like what they're doing quite as much as they did when they were in kindergarten and so forth. They were, you know, as kindergartners and first graders and second graders, they are so expressive and so wonderful. The drawings are so full of character and full of absolute joy. And I think at this third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade stage, the thing that usually is the problem is the nose, because the nose doesn't look right. And so what they do is they put 2 little holes, and then they put 2 lines down the side that aren't there. And actually the nose is made out of shadow, and it doesn't really have lines in the same way that, say, the mouth does. The mouth has edges to it that we can kind of describe, or shadows underneath it that kind of help us with the lower lip. The eye likewise has edges in it, and we're more comfortable with that. But the nose kind of eludes the young artist, and they get mad and they get frustrated, and it doesn't look right. And so I think it is important to give them the tools and the skill sets that help them establish that what they do is creating something that other people will look at and understand what it is. The thing you have to watch, I think, is that that one gets praised for realism, and that can make you abandon the expressive side and the abstract side. And you want to say, not use words like, oh, that's really good. You say, how did you make that so accurate? You know, that is so like the original photograph, and that sort of language. Okay, so do set yourself up, tape onto a piece of paper, put the photograph that you have down, and take a really easy bit that is a dark piece and fill in the missing bit. And we will work quietly and or with music for, let's see, we're 5:44, so where are we? Okay, this is not bad. We have some good time here. All right. I will try to work as dark as possible so that you can see what I'm doing. If there are any questions, please fire away. I'm happy to answer stuff that you're thinking about.
So there's a couple of pictures with our kit. Does it matter which one? Are we doing something with one or the other?
Sorry, pictures, sorry, say again.
Yeah, there's a couple of pictures. So we've got this one and we have.
Oh yeah, just do any one you have.
Okay.
Yeah, I have those too. So I have these.
Okay.
Yeah, and these.
Okay.
So yeah, any of the ones you have, and these are from the collection. That's a nice one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Here's the when you come to the eye, do encourage the kids to use the, let's call it the crutch or the support of putting a hole right in the corner of the eye so they know where to start. And in the other corner of the eye, so they know where to finish. And they can do that with anything, the corner of the mouth, the corner of an eye, the edge of the eyebrow. It's, you know, artists, I won't say cheat, but they use support systems all the time. The only one I would tell kids not to use is tracing, because I think that's just boring, and they can do better. So. They can keep the pieces they cut out as just evidence, but also sometimes they need to go back to those pieces if something kind of goes wrong. So encourage them to keep the pieces, and they use them as models as they're drawing. So that's important too. When you see a strange shape within the ear, it's quite helpful to turn it into something. Say, oh, what is that shape? It's no longer just a line, it's a shape. And the shape looks like an anvil, or it looks like a banana, or it looks like a teardrop, and so you use your imagination and engage the inner visual acuity to the problem at hand, and that's quite helpful. It also keeps the brain active and interested in the task that they're doing, because they're imagining what's going on. I have a pencil eraser. Sometimes that's nice to have, but erasers can be cut, especially white erasers, into a shape, a point, so that they can get in accurately. And so very often at the beginning of the school years, I would buy, 20 erasers and cut them into sections for the kids, so all of them had one.
Is there a certain kind of pencil you like to use with the children?
Yeah, but that's a personal matter. So some kids probably will like a hard pencil. I just can't bear hard pencils. I like, this is a 5B. I like anything 2B, 3B, 4B, 5B. I'm always on the B side of it. And of course the normal classroom pencils, often 2B. I don't like hard pencils at all. But I mean, certainly anytime you have a B pencil, that's pretty good. I do suggest to them that keeping it sharp is important. And if the pencil sharpener in the room drives you nuts because it makes a lot of noise and kids get up and down to go to it, then I think probably having a little hand sharpener on a set of tables is a good idea. And a sharp pencil is a sharp brain, I've said before, and I think that that helps. That if they have a good sharp pencil, it sort of is keeps them being accurate and having the reward of it looking pretty good.
Okay, I've taken a chunk out by the face, and I have the jumping off point, you can say to the kids, and I have the landing point of the side of the face. And I know that the earlobe comes in there, but the rest of it's black. Okay. This process allows for something else to happen too. You aren't just tied to the fact that you're going to do endless drawings from photographs, and it's always going to be the same problem of trying to get the most realistic thing. As you progress with this, if you are working over the period of a term, at some point, and this was really successful in a school, Mapleton School, that you can cut a face in half, and like the abstract portrait, you can collage the second half of the face and draw into the collage, leaving the photograph in place of the person, so that the whole symmetrical face is cut, and one side is expressive and one is a photograph. And so that makes a very interesting problem, because if you do it as taking photographs of the children themselves, a good way to do that is to set up an angle poise light, turn lights off in the classroom, and get some really good shadow shapes going on the child's face. Print those out on the photocopier. I would advise you to print the face to be at least 8 inches top to bottom, so they really can see it and get into it. If it's smaller, it gets a little bit fiddly. So think about a normal cartridge size piece of paper with a full head on it. You're going to have the kids sitting absolutely straight onto the camera, and good shadow shapes on one side and light on the other. And you're going to eventually have them cut it in half. Give them 2 copies of it. One copy has this very expressive creation on one side, and the other, you go for accuracy. This is after they've experienced doing what we're doing here once or twice. So they've proved to themselves that they can become a photocopier. And then you're going to up the ante a little bit. You're going to take away the whole half of a face that they know very well, which is their own face. And they're going to be free with that, mess around with it, put pieces of paper, do little realistic bits, do little design bits, and move forward with an idea like that. And that makes another hurdle for them, because they're not doing these little tiny chunks. They're doing a really big chunk, but they have the other side of the face to remind them about symmetry. They're drawing a mirror image. It's a little difficult, but still they poked a hole and established where the corner of the mouth is, so they can work to that. And then they can also play with it. And that gives them 2 drawings that begin to bring some of these contrast points up about accuracy and having fun with it, or being more inventive or being more design based. And that's a good creative journey, I think, for a lot of kids. Okay, I have my jumping off point, and I can see where I'm going here on the side of the face. I can see there is something that is really important to artists, which is called a negative shape. In other words, we have the thing here, which is the braid, we have the side of the face here, and in between you see that little white shape. Negative shapes really need you to invent something to say, okay, that negative shape is, it's an iron. No, it's not. It's a piece of confetti at an angle. it is something that if you can name it, you tend to draw it more accurately. Okay, so I've named it. My drawing, my space is a little tiny bit bigger, I think, than the actual thing. So I'll trim that a little bit. But that's helpful. And again, you're engaging the imagination and getting the brain to think about what it's actually seeing. Okay, we're getting there. I'm going to jump to the eyes so you can see the whole in the work process. Most of the kids I work with use scissors, but you can also just tear pieces away. I'm not going to do the eyebrows at first. I'm going to cut right between. Okay, so the eyebrow's still there. I want to do that separately. Here's my mark for one corner of the eye. Here's my mark for the other. I know where I'm starting. I know where I'm finishing. And what I have to do is make an assessment of the size of the pupil of the eye. And also assess, is that a flat line? Is it a curved line? How curved is that line? A lot of people work intuitively and silently. Their minds are turned silent. I don't work that way. You will have children in your class that work silently. They don't talk to themselves. And I think that's good to call out too, to sort of say, you may want to talk to yourself. You may want to put this into language. I find it helpful because I think I'm exercising both the left and the right brain, which gets me out of trouble when I look at it and I say, that isn't right. What is wrong with that shape? What is wrong with that negative space? What is wrong with that angle? But not all people work like that. And it doesn't say that one method is better than the other. One of the things that Dorothy Edwards says is, with the white of the eye, notice the white shape and think about it as a shape rather than, oh, I know what an eye looks like. It's like a sort of fish shape with a ball in the middle. That's the way a lot of people draw the eye. Most often the eye sits under the lid and it is not a complete circle. It is a semicircle. So think about the shape of the white and take note of that. One of the things that you save towards the end, if you're working on white paper, it's one thing. If you're working on mid-tone and a paper bag, you save the highlights till later. I don't have highlights in this photograph, but you can have a white chalk pencil in the classroom or a very pointy bit of chalk. And at the very end, encourage the kids to not go mad with white on their drawing. But if you're on a mid-tone paper like this one, you can put in the white highlights in the eye and so forth, if you can see there. If you let the kids loose with white, they'll put white all over the face. So tell them less is more and just put little tiny bits of tone in eyes and with your the whites of the eyes and the highlights there. The other thing that you can practice to begin with is to say, like the scale between abstract and figured and realistic or photographic, there's a scale of grays. How light a gray can you make next to white? Get a little darker, get still a little darker, get very dark. And I suggest to the kids that they reduce the grays in any photograph they're working from to 1 or 2 or 3 grays. In other words, you have white on one end, black on the other, and 1 or 2 grays in between, thinking about light grays or sort of charcoaly grays, but not black. And that gives them a little bit of a range of, being able to assess, say, the shade that is underneath the eye in this photograph that isn't as dark as the pupil of the eye. And we just dust that in very lightly under the eye. So in other words, that they have a range that allows them to kind of move across some of the shade shapes and things that are there. Okay, how's our time? So we're so good. Keep going, and I will chatter at you only as I meet problems that I think might be something you would want to know. Any problems, please say.
Hi, I have a question.
What?
So you were talking about giving the kids like a break to do more abstract expressionist parts of this assignment. How do you work that in? Say they're going through this and they're just getting kind of frustrated and they kind of need a break. What's your approach to working that into this project?
If you're working on a 17 by 11 piece of paper, then you can put the 8.5 by 11 in the middle of that, and you're clipping away and drawing that. And then you say, we will be doing a decorative edge. And let's say we're working with Aztecs or we're working with Native Americans. And then we have support visuals that they can use as stimulus to create patterns around the edge. So let's say you have a 50-minute slot for this, or a half-hour slot. And after about 15, 20 minutes, somebody's getting edgy with it. You say, how about doing just a little checkerboard, decoration on the outside for a minute, give yourself a rest, just play with a few lines, do some curvilinear decorative bits. Let me give you another example here. This is a 3rd grader. And so we cut holes for the eyes in the stencil that they had. And I only had them do eyes, the nostrils, and the mouth. And we just cut holes right in the middle of the drawing, the mouth, the nose, the eyes, and left everything else intact, as it were. And then I had them take that away and make up the rest of the face in a kind of mask. And there was support patterning of rugs and various other things for them to do. So then you have a kind of nice contrast between the extremes, I think. And again, or you can do it just as this one of the Afghan child. There's a story here that I think would be important to talk about, that in this particular session that I did at American Fork, I had the Afghan photographs that I got permission from the photographer. He's called Faisal Sheikh. And he had said, yes, you can use my photographs. And they're of Afghan refugees. And I had this sort of feeling that maybe the children would say, oh, her hair is messy, or, she looks sad and I don't want to draw her. And there wasn't a word like that. And as the kids drew these children, and I think it is very interesting to transpose to other cultures, other ethnic groups, they are looking at this face. The teacher is going around saying, oh, well done, that is, you're really looking carefully. I like that you're working so slowly. Or how did you do that? Explain to me, blah, 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 blah. And you're looking at a face over a long period of time, the child is, in a focused way, very much like you learn the face of a friend. And I think that it has real potential to break down barriers of difference, barriers of strangeness or otherness, because you become familiar with this face, your brain thinks friend, thinks familiar. And so I think there's something, huge to be gained there in terms of taking away difference, taking away, I don't understand, I'm not familiar with this kind of face, particularly in Utah, because we have a culture that is not as diverse as, say, if we were living in New York or Los Angeles. So I think there's a valuable thing there. It also very quickly takes you past things that are evaluations that older students make. The example I would give you of that is when I was teaching at university level, I would say to the students, please bring in a head that is 8 inches from top to bottom. Tomorrow we're going to be going through the face proportions, and I want you to be able to draw a large scale face. And all the girls would come in with the front cover of Vogue magazine, and by coffee break, tea break, whatever, at 11 o'clock, they were so bored with this face that they went off to the library and found more interesting faces, which usually was, indigenous faces or older faces or something like that. So again, you break down the stereotype kind of look of things with students. And I think that's a healthy thing to do, and offers you opportunities for exploring different topics rather robustly. So yeah.
I think also it allows them to understand emotions and expressions. Like, you may not be familiar with the culture, but you look at their eyes and their mouth and you realize they feel what I feel sometimes.
Yes, and I would use this as an example. This isn't just one, exceptional work. They all were of this kind of standard. And the eyes of that child, you absolutely read what that child feels. And there's a reflection in the eyes of the photographer. There's a little silhouette. And the kids actually caught that in the accuracy of what they were doing. It was extraordinary. And so I think you yourself will develop, ideas like the clock, or support mechanisms like, okay, this child's really having difficulty. Let's just cut along the edge of the head. Let's go right along the edge so that they know where that head is. Or let's redo the nose. You have a second copy there. They lost their bit and they can't find it and they're getting frustrated. Here's another one. We'll just overlay that. That's fine. And I think the thing that the cheats and the crutches that they invent are really important. You can say, hey, that's a great way to do it. Mind that you make it more difficult next time. So I think, going through the process with them rather than at them or teaching it, that there is this way. And I'm sure your teaching incorporates all that anyway. It's just the idea of working with the group and letting the group inform the group of different ways of doing things. And as soon as they get dependent on something, you say, okay, this time try it without that. If you feel that they need to be a little bit more adventurous, but you'll know when to, kind of push that envelope a little, depending on the child's kind of degree of competence at any point.
Could I see that one again that you showed us? Example, was it a third grader that did the eyes and the nose, and was it the mouth too?
I had some more of these. I pulled out the ones that I could put my hands on. So what happened with these? They did these fantastic masks. I mean, this was, gosh, I'm trying to think what their topics were. But anyway, they some of them actually drew the kind of area that they had cut away, so that the rest of the face really went into mask. It really looked like a face looking through a designed mask. And so, I mean, the accuracy here, you can describe things. You can say the upper lip looks like hills. That's like hills. And the upper lip usually is darker than the lower lip. You kind of don't have to draw the lower lip, don't have to put a line all the way along the bottom of that lower lip. There's a gap there. Look, there's no line there. And I think you point things out like that. Oh, look, the line stops. You can erase that line you put there because actually there's a softness here. And I think if you remind them is like children think metaphorically fairly naturally. And I think if you say, oh, the nostril is like a egg, or it's like an ellipse, or it's like a flying saucer, or that's helpful, because then they don't see it as a problem, they see it as a thing. There's another wonderful trick. What you do is you give kids a problem of drawing something pretty simple. You say, here's a line. I want you to copy this. Oh dear, it's not going to show up. Let me do it on here. Make sure you can see this. Yeah, you can see that. Okay, so here's a line. I want you to, in the blank square below, I want you to copy that line. Then you ask the child or young person to show their friend this, and the friend is to spot the difference. And the friend can be the teacher then, because what they do is they spot the difference of coming along that line. That's pretty good. Oh, you turned too soon. You should have gone down a little bit more roundly here and around. The spot the difference game, a parent, a teacher, anybody can be the teacher then. They could come in and say, you didn't notice that there was this mistake in the drawing. You didn't put that in. Oh, okay, I put that in. You didn't notice that that this line goes over the edge. You fade it out. It just stops right there. And the spot the difference applies here, because you put the piece there and you say, okay, spot the difference, and you ask your friend to help you. It doesn't become criticism. It's about perception. I don't know how many of you have come across the educational tool of perceive and reflect. It's one of the most useful statements. If you know it, forgive me for repeating it. If you don't, it's so good because it's not doing a critique. when you do something like this, you're perceiving and you're reflecting on the perception. It doesn't matter if it's slightly wrong. It's just that you're helping someone to see what they can do to make it as accurate as that. And then you take it away and you say, okay, so now I'm going to look at yours and I'm going to do a perceive and a reflect on it. What did you actually see? And is it important? Should you change it? Might it be better for changing it? Or doesn't it really matter? Because if I'm doing 30 hairs on the outside here, and by the way, do the hair as slowly as you do the face, look at each turn, ask, because kids will say, okay, there's hair, because a pencil looks like a piece of hair. They want to really look at the hair. But does it matter if my stray hair goes over there or goes down here? It might actually have been in those positions. So it's not that important. But when we're doing perceive and reflect on the eye to get a really accurate look of this child, we want to be as accurate as possible. So that's a good tool to use as a kind of wind up, perceive and reflect. Also, when you eventually open the envelope with their original drawing that they did in 20 minutes of a face, you can say, all right, perceive and reflect on this. What do you see in your original drawing? What do you see in this drawing that you're working on? How does that make you feel? Do you like the original face for this and that and the other thing? It's expressive, it's funny, it has a character to it. This is accurate and on point, and maybe it doesn't have that funny character in it. So I think that tool is a great one for evaluation. Oh, recording is stopped. And you can gauge the tolerance level of your kids and sort of you make a decision as to whether they need to stop, whether their art lesson is something that they only do 15 or 20 minutes because they really are absolutely on prime focus for that long, and you take advantage of that, and they build up the drawing in very, very short bursts, or not, depending on how you evaluate that. There's an artist called Holman Hunt, and he did a drawing at one point that he spent more time, like 2 months, on the hair. So don't let kids, do the hair in 5 seconds because they're really fed up with doing the drawing. Some red hair.
What I love about this is it allows children to learn the art of observation and detail, which I think is not always easy to teach.
Yeah, and going back to the music we had earlier, that's a nice thing to keep it rolling, gently in the classroom, that they can, have a bit of music at the same time as working on something like this. What's that doing? are your topics, third, fourth, and fifth grade? Are you still Incas in the fifth and things like that? Yes, no?
This is like a reverse puzzle.
Yeah, yeah. I liked the mention that in abstract there is no wrong, and I use that too in the classroom a lot to say there's no right and wrong in art, and slow is best. You know, work slowly. Most things we're encouraged to work really, really fast. Slow it down. Keep it slow. Keep it thoughtful.
So Jan,
Mm-hmm.
what is the best way to convince students to slow down and take their time? You always have students who are like, I'm going to be the first one done. What's the best way to convince them that slow is good?
Well, I think, I suppose actually, if they're speeding up, and I do this, you know, I think use yourself as an example. The object is not to finish, but to be accurate. And if you're starting to speed up because you want to get done with it as if it's a chore, then go to the border and do something that you can do fast and kind of get away with it. So, you know, and I mean, if you're monitoring 20, 30, 40 kids, you know, obviously keeping an eye on all of them at the same time is difficult, but the early finishers, and some will race to the finish, just have a backup, you know, now I want you to do this one, you know, or now it's, you should spend some time carefully doing a little, you know, checkerboard along the whole top of this drawing as something that is intense, but rather mindless, you know, that they just are filling in black or something like that. So I think, you know, having the backup task there for the early finisher is one tactic. And it's almost like, oh, well, you know, you have finished. Now I would like you to take an even closer look at drawing this grasshopper or the fur on this section of a tiger. I want you to draw each hair in the direction that it's going. So, you know, there's usually a fallback point there that I think, you know, it'll slow down some of the other ones who don't want to do a second drawing, you know, and kind of make them, you know, focus on the one that they're actually engaged in. Does that help?
It does, thank you.
That was one of the things so difficult in the class of so many kids, isn't it? That you have these ones that barrel through something, and of course, your ideal would be that everything finishes at the same minute. And of course, it never, ever happens. So the long-term objective is that by art school or by whatever, the student can draw from the model, not photograph dependent. One can say this is not giving them the proportion of the face, but the familiarity of the fact that, hey, the eye is here and the top of the head is here. That's quite a distance. Actually, it's halfway. You know, that familiarity builds up, and eventually you can go into the kind of ideas of proportion of that halfway point. And Betty Edwards is a really good support system for that. She extols the virtue of not talking and not being verbal, and I'm just not like that. So, you know, that can give you that other perspective. If you think some of the students need that, I prefer to have the kind of verbal side of things working at the same time. But her basic, you've seen this before, I'm sure, eyes halfway down the head. We're looking at a symmetrical full front face, nose about, well, no, let's go to the eyes. The eye line is divided into 5. The distance between the eyes is an eye width, and you can have kids measure that, measure eye width and the distance between, it's an eye distance between the outer edge of the eye and the side of the head. The nose is about an eye and a half, maybe a little more. The mouth is 1/3 of the remaining distance. So the mouth is higher than some kids expect it to be. Okay, all that information's in the drawing on the right side of the brain. And that is down the road for me. I prefer to enter it this way so that the young people are sort of convinced that they can do this, and then they go into the detail and the abstraction of it at a little bit of a later stage. I think the thing that happens is when they produce these drawings that you've seen here, and they're displayed in the school and parents see them, they will be hearing the word, oh my gosh, that's really good. The praise is useful. The danger of the word good is that then that equates with this is what art is, getting praise and doing something that is, in quotes, good. What they're saying is it's accurate. And because we see the accuracy in it, we feel confirmed and we understand it, whereas we don't know quite how to approach abstract. We can't say whether it's good or average or anything. We don't know. We don't have that kind of criteria of it looks like this, you know, that they're the same. And you don't want the child's spectrum of art to be shanghaied on only doing accurate work that people say is good. But I think the thing that happens here is it builds confidence. And I would say that one of the big takeaways that I learned in teaching in the classroom as a residency artist was that very often the child who is an underachiever does really well with this if you are very patient and very supportive and have them take tiny little chunks at a time. And on numerous occasions, the child whose desk in the school I went into that was separated from all the other children, for whatever reason, I never went into that, but it would be the one that suddenly became the star of drawing in the class. And that buildup of confidence in somebody who is not so good at everything else becomes a great reward for that child. And so I think having this support system, that they can go home, they can take a photograph of an airplane, or they can take a photograph of something that interests them, the horse, and cut into it and produce through this mechanical process an accurate drawing that brings praise. That's important, and I think it frees up some kids from feeling underachieving in other areas. So yeah.
So you would start this as young as 3rd grade, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the younger ones, you can play with like pattern, or maybe I did tigers with really little kids and butterflies. I did butterflies that were an accurate butterfly on one side and asked them to make up crazy wings on the other side, and things like that. So they're just maybe a hint of symmetry that they're picking up on. You don't want to fence them. That's the thing I think, about all art. You don't want to fence a creative person into something that they think, oh, well, I'm going to do realism the rest of my life. I think of this as the tools of the trade, basically, and that it's what you do with this tool, not that you are a photocopying machine or a camera. It's okay, if you're obsessed with drawing flowers absolutely realistically and photographically, I suppose it's the flowers that you choose and the context you put them in and the materials that you learn and so on and so forth. There's certainly nothing wrong with that. It's just that you wouldn't want to limit an artist's inspiration or dynamic to just that if they had more, kind of other things to conquer, as it were. So yeah. What are you finding difficult? Anybody? No difficulties, that's good.
Sometimes it's hard to know where to put the paper that I'm copying so that I know, where to draw and look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can cheat with that. You can put it back in and say, oh, oh dear, I went up too high on that little white bit there, so that you reassure yourself. It's like when you first met long division. You're asking kids to make a leap of faith into an area that they feel uncertain on all sorts of topics. And drawing, is something that a lot of kids feel, I have no talent. I do so hate that word. Everybody can learn to play Twinkle Twinkle on the violin. It is doable. And it's not a question of talent. The base ability to actually get that to happen, or on the recorder or something, really 99% of everybody can do that. And I think, this is the same. If a child is struggling beyond words, they still will produce something that is expressive, that you can comment on to that degree, to say, let's look at these differences between these And it's not a platform of one is good and one is bad. One has this kind of vigor, this action, this scribbly hair, this kind of full of character face. And this one is more like spot on to the photocopy, but they both tell us something in terms of a portrait of an individual human being. So I think it's it's finding language that is supportive, isn't it? To the differences in art. And I think you can use examples of fine art pieces where you have a Picasso version of a portrait of a person, and then you have a Matisse, and then you have a so-and-so, and art is all over that range. And you can say of the kind of wild one, hey, this is more like this artist who is highly regarded. So yeah, having backup examples are useful too. I think keep the pieces is one of the things that you need to remind them. Don't lose your little pieces, because you may go back on them. You may have to even want to revise something.
That's the part that was most frustrating to me, is I'm so used to revising everything that it was awkward.
Yeah. So that, in other words, you're feeling that you're not erasing, or you can't erase or something.
Well, for me, it felt like I'm used to starting light and then moving dark. And this is just doing it all at once in one place.
Yeah. And is it beginning to build up that it makes sense to you?
Yeah. I'm getting success.
Yeah.
And I think the kids will.
Yeah. I do quite a lot of the spot the difference as warm up. That I'll do a whole sheet of them, and I'll put little tiny marks in the square, and see if they pick up on the mistake. In other words, a little mark or the oversailing of a line outside the square. I call that out to sort of say, okay, so oh look, you noticed that. That's really cool. What's our time? 6:39. What do we have? We have 20 minutes. Is there a wind up, Michelle, that you have to do?
Yes, there is.
How many minutes do you need for that?
Probably about 15. So take 4 or 5 more minutes, and then we'll.
Okay. Let me see if I have anything I want to show you down here. So I'll do a little show and tell. This is one that I did for the Leonardo, that is for a little film they're doing for caregivers. And this is on Trader Joe bag. So all the kids can have access to grocery bags and get them to bring them in, because of course the mid-tone papers are more like flesh. And that means that you work down to the darks, and then with their little bits of chalk or a chalk pencil, and if you get a white pencil for the classroom, you only need like 3 or 4 of those pencils, and you hang on to them for dear life. And make sure they're not oil bound, make sure they are chalky. So they're like this kind of pencil, or like charcoal. And tell them less is more. They only do a little tiny bit of white. They don't start putting white all over the place. But if they see little highlights on the lip or on the nose, it really makes the drawing pop, which is, really lovely. These photographs, I think they're online. I want to get his name right. It's Faisal Sheikh. His photographs of the Afghan children are wonderful. They're full front, straight on. So that's really useful, to have that kind of symmetry, because that starts taking kids into the proportion idea. This is one that was, I don't know if this is 3rd or 2nd grade, but this will show you level of accuracy a little bit. You can see how the lines are getting, they want to do thick, so they're doing them several times. They're not like the photocopier, but they're more interpretive, which is really rather nice. And you can see the sorts of things that, they're thinking there. And tell them to do something really easy at first, just a black bit, just something that makes them feel safe. So in other words, you just take this little black bit out here, just a little triangle out of there, and just fill it in. That you can do that. And so little bit by little bit, it doesn't really matter if some of the cloth is kind of in the wrong place. They warm up to how to actually do this on something that isn't as critical as, say, the eye. This is the photograph of the little girl that you saw earlier. The photographer reflected in her eyes. And these are really young kids. I can't remember if this might be 2nd grade or 3rd, but a tiger or a lion or something like that is really fun for them to do. And you can see that it's more interpretive, but it's the same process of cutting bits away and building it up. And when it comes to things that are furry, slow is really good, and ask them about the angle of the fur. Tell them that it isn't just scribble, it's what is that angle? If they are familiar with the clock face, use the clock. If there's another strategy that you can think of, go for that. I once was teaching a man who was all over the place with the drawing, really struggling, and I said, okay, clock face, here's what you do. This is the angles. These are the angles of the clock face. And I then went around the other 30 people and came back to him about 20 minutes later. And his drawing was just like insanely accurate. And I said, oh my gosh, that's wonderful. What are you doing? And he said, well, I'm a sailor. He said, I'm using a compass. So he could see the differences between tiny degrees of a 360-degree clock. So, everybody brings some different strategy to what they can do. Some kids will know about compasses and be able to use that. Yeah, that kind of trick of the trade. Michelle, do you need the time now?
I do. I just have a few things to finish up with, but thank you so much, Jan. This has been amazing.
Well, good.
I have never been successful at drawing anything, and this looks pretty decent. So,
well, if there's any follow-up questions, don't hesitate to send me an email. I'm happy to handle that. So.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Let's see. I'm going to move this over. So, just a couple of final things. I do have. Thank you all for sending me your beautiful watercolors. I'm going to share with you what I did with those. So here you go. Here are the watercolors I received. I'm sorry if they may be not rotated correctly. I tried to figure out which way was up, but I love to put them together like this to sort of see how they complement each other, how the colors work with each other, but they're all so incredibly different. So thank you for participating and for sharing. I'm gonna leave that up for just a minute. So as we finish up, I just wanted to let you know, I've been answering some questions in the chat, but here's just sort of my little wrap up. All of the instructions, lesson plans for the 3 projects we've done tonight are available as PDFs in a Google Drive. I did share it in the chat. I'm going to send a follow-up email tomorrow with all this information. I also have thrown a bunch of other random, maybe not so random, NEHMA resources into that drive. I put the videos that I shared tonight in the drive. A PDF of this beautiful collage of artwork is in there. A couple of some of the things that Allison shared during her lesson, the PowerPoint that she had up with the different artworks and how color and line is also in there. I've also, last fall, we participated in UEN's Blended Learning Initiative. Maybe some of you have heard of that, maybe some didn't, but they challenged us to create online resources for teachers to help you sort of bridge the gap between classroom and digital if that's your struggle. So we created 4, we called them courses called Exploring Art with NEHMA. each with a different topic and theme, one of which is art and poetry. The others are 5th grade STEAM, which combines science and art. Connecting Communities uses our current African-American exhibition of African-American artists. And then my mind is blank. What was the 4th one, Allison? I'll remember it. Connecting Communities, 5th grade team. Oh, Turmoil and Hope, which was the exhibition we had up before this new agricultural exhibition. So I've included those. They have videos as well as lesson plans. There are also PowerPoints that sort of walk you through our thought process of teaching those and developing those. If you're having a struggle with the lesson plan, if you want to see those PowerPoints, just let me know. All of that should be up on our website in the next week or so. With these exhibitions, we've all been a little bit crazy and we have not been updating the website, but I swear that's going to get done next week. What else have I put in there? Also on our website, on our education page, is information about all the programs we have available. If you would like us to be part of your classroom, if you would like to bring your class to the museum, please let us know. We are here to help you in any way that we can. In the chat, we were talking about finding images to do this drawing. If you would like to use NEHMA's images, let me know. I have a whole folder that I worked with Jan to pick the right faces and the right images. So just let me know, I can send those to you. Oh, also, if you didn't send your watercolor, or if you would like to share your found poems, throw them into the Google Drive so we can all see them, because I would really like to see what y'all came up with. I will repost the Google Drive here in the chat in just a second. And let's see, there was one other thing that somebody asked me that I did not answer. Oh, the collage of the artwork that you sent me of the watercolors, I did in PowerPoint, but I've also done it very similarly in Publisher. You just create shapes of whatever size you want, arrange them however you want. And then if you go to your shape format, you can like fill it with a color. You can also fill it with a picture. Sometimes it stretches or condenses the pictures, so you have to sort of play with what works best. These are all just 1.5 by 1.5 squares, and so I just filled it with the pictures. But it's a really quick way to make a collage. You can I actually had all of this formatted before you sent me the pictures, so all I had to do was drop them in. It's a really quick way to do that for your students. One more reminder that in order to be marked here as attending the evenings and be eligible for relicensure points, please complete the Google form that Jordan just added to the chat box. I think that's it. Does anybody have any last questions about anything we've done tonight, about NEHMA, about our education programs? Shout them out.
I just have one about licensure. Will you just email then a document, or how will we get that back that we've attended?
I will throw that over to Jordan.
Yeah, so I can answer that question. So the Google form is just a way for us to take attendance to make sure we have everyone accounted for. And then I will send a survey out about this evening within the next 24 hours to your email. And you'll complete that survey, and I will add your relationship points through Midas, through the Utah State Board Education portal on Midas. And that is how you'll get your 3 points for this evening. And thank you again. I just want to give another shout out to NEHMA for such a great evening and for coordinating such a great workshop and doing a great job. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Well, everybody have a lovely evening. Thank you for joining us. It was really fun for us to put this together, and it was interesting to do this over Zoom instead of doing it in person, but it was fun to have people from literally all over the state join us. And I even sent one of our packages of supplies to Florida. So even people outside of the state joined us tonight.
Do you still want our watercolor if we didn't get it in, or are you done with that?
Yes, absolutely. Send it to me and I will add it to the Google Drive.
All right.
All right, and I'm going to send the link to that drive once more in the chat. And again, I will send out an email tomorrow with everything in it.
Thank you. This was fabulous.
All right, thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for the materials and thanks for the great lessons.
Oh, of course.
This really was great, Michelle. Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.
I'll be sending you the results of the survey when I get a majority of those in.
Awesome. And I will figure out how to send you the recording.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay.
I look forward to it.
I've
Thank
been
you.
to a lot of these, Michelle, and I really enjoyed this one. It's one of the best.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate that.